Human mechanic bought an old spaceship for 50 cents and found something inside that shocked everyone. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. Across the vast expanse of Galactic Salvage Yard 459, under the harsh glare of 3 alien suns, Blake Turner wiped the sweat from his brow and wondered how he had fallen so far from grace. The acrid smell of coolant and oxidized metal filled Blake's nostrils as he trudged through the mountains of discarded spacecraft parts. His worn boots kicked up dust that had settled from a dozen different worlds, the fine particles catching in the artificial gravity field that kept the vast junkyard from floating away into the void. It was hot, miserable work, but it was all he had left after the incident that had cost him his prestigious position at the Interspecies Fleet Engineering Corps. At 34, Blake had never imagined he'd end up here, the only human in a salvage yard run by the Corvin, six-limbed arthropoid aliens known for their shrewd business practices and technological expertise. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and after being blacklisted from every reputable human engineering outfit in the quadrant, Blake had little choice but to accept whatever work he could find, even if it meant being looked down upon by aliens who considered humans to be technologically primitive. "Turner, your shift ended 20 minutes ago," came the clicking, translator-assisted voice of Zarek, Blake's Corvin supervisor. The alien's compound eyes reflected Blake's tired face in multiple fractured images. "Unless you're planning to sleep here, you should leave. The magnetic containment fields power down in an hour." Blake nodded, running a hand through his dark hair, now streaked with premature gray. "Just finishing up the Nebulan engine salvage, boss. Thought I might find something worth a bonus credit or two." Zarek's mandibles clicked in what Blake had come to recognize as amusement. "Always the optimist, human. Go home. Tomorrow we receive a new batch of derelicts from the Centauri expansion zone. More work for you then." As Blake made his way toward the exit, something caught his eye. A small transport vessel half buried under a pile of scrap. Unlike most of the junk in the yard, this ship seemed strangely intact, its hull design unlike anything Blake had seen before. It wasn't Corvin, nor Trilaxian, nor any of the other common species craft that typically ended up in Salvage Yard 459. Curiosity piqued, Blake changed course, approaching the odd little ship. Its hull was a burnished copper color, with graceful lines that seemed almost organic rather than manufactured. Despite being covered in dust and grime, the vessel had an elegance to it that was rare in utilitarian space transport. "Hey, Zarek," Blake called out, pointing at the ship. "What's the story with this one?" The Corvin supervisor scuttled over, his exoskeleton creaking slightly. He regarded the vessel with apparent disinterest. "That? Ancient garbage. Been here longer than I have. Some say it's from the pre-expansion era, but no one can get it open or make any sense of its systems. Not worth the effort to process for parts." Blake ran his hand along the hull, feeling an unusual warmth beneath his fingertips. "Mind if I take a closer look?" "Waste your time if you want," Zarek replied with a dismissive wave of one of his upper limbs. "If you find a way to make it valuable, the yard takes 60%. Blake smiled. "And if I want to buy it outright?" The Corvin's mandibles clicked rapidly, the equivalent of laughter. "You? Buy it? With what?" "Your charming human personality." "I've got 50 credits saved up," Blake replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. His meager savings were supposed to be for emergencies, but something about this ship called to him. Zarek made a whistling sound through his spiracles. 50 credits wouldn't buy you the landing strut of a functioning vessel." Blake stood his ground. "You just said it was ancient garbage. Not worth processing for parts. So it's taking up valuable space in your yard." The Corvin considered this, his compound eyes shifting colors slightly as he calculated. "True. But even as scrap, the metal alone is worth." "I'll give you half a credit," Blake interrupted, gambling on his hunch that Zarek wanted the mysterious vessel gone more than he wanted to argue over its value. 50 cents, as we humans say. For a long moment, Zarek was silent, his alien face unreadable to human eyes. Then, to Blake's surprise, The Corvin extended a limb. Done. Half a credit. But you must remove it from my salvage yard within 3 standard cycles, or it becomes mine again. Blake couldn't believe his luck. He transferred the pitiful sum from his wrist computer to Zarek's account and received a digital certificate of ownership in return. As the Corvin scuttled away, Blake stood alone beside his purchase, wondering if he'd just made the smartest or the stupidest decision of his already troubled life. The ship was small, designed for a crew of perhaps 2 or 3, but even covered in grime, it was beautiful. Blake spent the next hour examining its exterior, finding no obvious entry points, no standard docking mechanisms or airlock systems. The hull seemed to be made of a single piece of material, with no visible seams or panels. As daylight faded and the artificial atmosphere generators began to cycle down for the night, Blake reluctantly prepared to leave. He would need tools and equipment to properly examine his new acquisition, and he was too exhausted to begin the real work tonight. Just as he was about to walk away, Blake placed his palm flat against the hull one last time. "See you tomorrow," he murmured, feeling slightly foolish for talking to an inanimate object. To his astonishment, the ship hummed to life beneath his touch. A soft blue glow emanated from previously invisible patterns in the hull, and a section of the side smoothly reconfigured itself, revealing an entrance. Blake stumbled back, his heart racing. The ship had responded to him, to his human touch, or perhaps his human voice. After a moment of hesitation, Blake approached the newly formed doorway. The opening revealed a dimly lit interior, clean and preserved despite what must have been decades or even centuries in the salvage yard. The air that wafted out was surprisingly fresh, carrying a faint scent of something like cinnamon and ozone. "Hello," Blake called, peering into the ship. No response came except the soft hum of systems coming online. Taking a deep breath, Blake stepped inside. The moment he crossed the threshold, the interior lighting brightened, revealing a cockpit unlike any he had seen before. Instead of the typical control panels and navigation systems, the cockpit featured a single central chair surrounded by floating holographic interfaces. The displays showed symbols and patterns that Blake couldn't begin to decipher. The door sealed itself behind him, causing Blake to spin around in momentary panic. But the ship made no other threatening moves. Instead, it seemed to be waiting for something or someone. Blake cautiously approached the central chair, which adjusted its dimensions as he neared, perfectly accommodating his human frame. As he sat down, the holographic displays shifted, reorganizing themselves around him. A soft chime sounded, and a voice spoke, a warm, melodious female voice that somehow conveyed both age and youth simultaneously. Genetic compatibility confirmed. Human DNA pattern recognized. "Welcome, inheritor." Blake nearly jumped out of the chair. What are you?" "I am the integrated intelligence of this vessel," the voice replied calmly. "You may call me Arya. This ship is the Starweaver, last creation of the Luminarch civilization. I have awaited a compatible pilot for approximately 4,327 standard galactic years." Blake's mind reeled. The Luminarch were more legend than history, an advanced species said to have disappeared at the height of their technological achievement, leaving behind only fragments of their knowledge and culture. Most scientists considered them semi-mythical, their supposed feats of engineering dismissed as exaggerations. Yet here he was, sitting in what appeared to be a genuine Luminarch vessel. "Why me?" Blake asked, struggling to process the implications. "Why now? Your genetic structure contains markers compatible with Luminarch technology," Arya explained. "Such compatibility is exceedingly rare. When you spoke to the vessel and established physical contact, it triggered the recognition protocols." Blake let out a shaky laugh. "So, I bought a legendary spaceship for 50 cents because I happen to have the right DNA? That's insane." "Nevertheless, it is fact," Arya replied, with what Blake could have sworn was a hint of amusement. "The Starweaver is now bonded to you, Blake Turner, and only you can unlock its full capabilities." As if to demonstrate, new holographic displays blossomed around him, showing detailed schematics of the ship navigation charts of the galaxy, and systems that Blake couldn't even begin to comprehend. The sophistication of the technology was breathtaking, centuries, perhaps millennia beyond anything currently used by humans or the other known species. "This is impossible," Blake whispered, running his hands through the holographic displays. "If this technology is real, it's priceless." "Correct," Arya confirmed. "The Luminarch designed the Starweaver as a vessel of exploration and discovery. It contains technologies that your contemporaries would consider impossible: a miniaturized quantum fold drive, sentient adaptive materials, and enhanced cognition interfaces, among others." Blake's engineering background helped him grasp the revolutionary nature of what Arya was describing. A quantum fold drive in a ship this small? That was theoretically impossible with current technology. Such a drive would allow travel between galaxies, not just stars. "Why was this ship in a junkyard?" Blake asked, still struggling to accept his extraordinary luck. "How did something this valuable end up forgotten in Salvage Yard 459? Arya's voice took on a somber tone. "The Starweaver was placed in dormant mode when the last of the Luminarch departed this galaxy. It was programmed to await a genetically compatible pilot. Over the millennia, many species must have discovered it, but none could activate its systems. To them, it was merely an unusually durable but non-functional relic." Blake nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "And the exterior systems were designed to appear degraded and worthless to prevent theft or destruction." "Precisely," Arya confirmed. "A simple but effective camouflage." For several minutes, Blake sat in silence, trying to process the magnitude of his discovery. A ship with technology thousands of years advanced beyond the current galactic standard, responding to him alone. The implications were staggering and potentially dangerous. "Arya," he finally said, "if word gets out about what this ship really is, every government, corporation, and pirate in the galaxy will be hunting for it." "For me, that is a logical conclusion," Arya agreed. "The Luminarch foresaw such a possibility. That is why the Starweaver's true nature is detectable only by its bonded pilot. To all external scans, it will appear as a modestly upgraded but otherwise unremarkable vessel of whatever design you choose to present." Blake let out a low whistle of appreciation. "Holographic camouflage on a ship-wide scale? That's genius." As Blake explored the ship's interior, he discovered that despite its small external appearance, the Starweaver was remarkably spacious inside. What should have been a cramped two-person vessel instead contained comfortable living quarters, a small but well-equipped workshop, a medical bay with technology beyond anything in the known galaxy, and storage areas filled with artifacts and materials he couldn't identify. "Spatial displacement technology," Arya explained when Blake questioned the impossible dimensions. "The interior exists partially in a folded spatial dimension, allowing for greater volume than the exterior would suggest." Blake spent hours exploring the ship, asking questions, and trying to understand even a fraction of the technology at his disposal. By the time exhaustion finally overtook him, the salvage yard outside had long since gone dark, the three suns of this system having set hours ago. "You should rest, Inheritor," Arya suggested as Blake stifled another yawn. "Your neural pathways show signs of information saturation." Blake couldn't argue with that assessment. His mind felt like it was about to overflow. "Tomorrow," he murmured as he settled into the surprisingly comfortable bed in the living quarters. "Tomorrow we need to figure out what to do with you, Arya. This kind of technology could change everything." "Indeed," Arya replied softly as the lights dimmed automatically. "Sleep well, Blake Turner. Tomorrow brings new possibilities." As Blake drifted off to sleep aboard his 50-cent spaceship, he had no way of knowing that his discovery would soon send ripples across the galaxy, attracting attention from forces both benevolent and dangerous. His life as a disgraced human mechanic was about to change forever. The next morning, Blake awoke to the gentle sound of Arya's voice. "Good morning, Inheritor. The exterior environment is now suitable for egress. Your employer Zarek has arrived at the salvage yard and is approaching this location." Blake sat up quickly, momentarily disoriented before the events of the previous day came rushing back. He had bought a legendary spaceship for 50 cents. He had discovered an artificial intelligence named Aria. He was now the only person in the known galaxy who could control a vessel with technology thousands of years ahead of anything currently existing. Aria, can Zarek see that I've been in here all night? That the ship is active? Blake asked, hurriedly pulling on his boots. Negative. External camouflage protocols remain active. The Starweaver appears dormant and partially buried, exactly as before. Blake breathed a sigh of relief. Good. I need to keep this quiet until I figure out what to do. He quickly used the ship's surprisingly Earth-like bathroom facilities to freshen up, marveling at how the water seemed to clean itself in a closed system without any visible filtration. Another Luminarch miracle, no doubt. Is there any way for me to communicate with you when I'm outside the ship? Blake asked as he prepared to leave. This is possible, Aria confirmed. A small object materialized on a nearby surface, a simple metallic disc about the size of a coin. This neural interface will allow private communication between us. It adheres to the skin behind your ear and is undetectable to current scanning technology. Blake picked up the disc and placed it as instructed. It adhered comfortably, and he immediately heard Aria's voice in his mind, distinct from his own thoughts, but not intrusive. Communication link established. The interface also monitors your vital signs and can activate emergency protocols if necessary. Impressive, Blake murmured. Let me out, please. I need to act normal around Zarek. A section of the hull reconfigured itself, creating an exit. As soon as Blake stepped outside, the opening sealed seamlessly behind him, leaving no trace that it had ever existed. Zarek was indeed approaching, his chitinous exoskeleton gleaming in the morning light of the triple suns. The Corvin stopped several meters away, compound eyes fixed on Blake. You're here early, Turner, Zarek observed, mandibles clicking suspiciously. Eager to move your new purchase? Blake shrugged, trying to appear casual. Just assessing what I've got. Looks like it'll need some work before I can move it. You have 3 cycles, Zarek reminded him. After that, it becomes yard property again. I remember, Blake assured him. I'll have it out by then. Zarek seemed about to say something more, but was interrupted by the arrival of a sleek black shuttle at the yard's main landing pad. The vessel bore no markings, but its design suggested wealth and power. We have visitors, Zarek said, his tone shifting to one of deference. Important ones, it seems. Make yourself useful elsewhere, human. As Zarek scuttled away toward the landing pad, Aria's voice whispered in Blake's mind. Caution advised. That vessel's energy signature suggests advanced scanning technology. They may be searching for something. Blake felt a chill run down his spine. Already? How could anyone know about you so quickly? Unknown, Aria replied. But it would be prudent to appear occupied elsewhere in the salvage yard while observing their activities. Following Aria's advice, Blake moved to a different section of the yard and pretended to be examining parts from a derelict Trilaxian cargo hauler. From this vantage point, he could observe the visitors without being obvious. 3 figures emerged from the black shuttle. 2 were clearly security personnel, tall, muscular humans wearing the distinctive gray uniforms of the Galactic Corporate Alliance's private military. The third was a woman, slender and elegant in a tailored suit that screamed wealth and authority. Her silver blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and even from a distance, Blake could sense her commanding presence. Identification complete, Aria informed Blake. The woman is Lauren Bennett, Chief Acquisitions Officer for Helix Dynamics, the largest weapons manufacturing corporation in the quadrant. Blake frowned. What would Helix Dynamics want in a salvage yard? Their primary business is weapons technology development, Aria replied. Given recent data access, they have been particularly interested in acquiring artifacts from ancient civilizations, especially Luminarch. Blake watched as Zarek led Bennett and her guards through the yard, gesturing expansively with his upper limbs in what Blake recognized as the Corvin version of salesman enthusiasm. They appeared to be conducting a general inspection, but Blake noticed how Bennett's gaze lingered on certain pieces of technology. "She's looking for something specific," Blake murmured. "Agreed," Arya responded. "I am detecting targeted scanning emanations from devices concealed in their equipment." Bennett and her entourage were methodically working their way through the yard, getting closer to where the Starweaver lay partially buried. Blake felt his heart rate accelerating. "Arya, will their scanners detect anything unusual about you?" "Negative. My camouflage systems exceed their detection capabilities. However, your elevated stress response may draw attention. Recommend you continue normal activities while monitoring the situation." Taking a deep breath to calm himself, Blake resumed sorting through the Trilaxian parts, occasionally glancing toward the visitors. After what seemed like an eternity, Bennett's group moved past the area where the Starweaver was located without showing any particular interest. Blake allowed himself a small sigh of relief. But his relief was short-lived. As the inspection party neared his position, Bennett suddenly changed direction and headed directly toward him. Her security personnel followed, hands resting casually near their concealed weapons. "You there," Bennett called out, her voice crisp and authoritative. "You're Blake Turner, aren't you?" Blake straightened up, wiping his hands on his coveralls. "That's me. Can I help you with something?" Bennett smiled, but the expression didn't reach her eyes. "Perhaps. I'm Lauren Bennett, Chief Acquisitions Officer for Helix Dynamics." She extended a manicured hand, which Blake shook after a moment's hesitation. "I understand you previously worked for the Interspecies Fleet Engineering Corps before your unfortunate dismissal." Blake's expression hardened. "That's public record. What's it to Helix Dynamics?" "We've been reviewing your file, Mr. Turner. Despite the official reason for your termination, your technical expertise is quite impressive. Your theories on adaptive propulsion systems were particularly forward-thinking, even if your superiors found them unorthodox." Blake said nothing, wondering where this was going. Bennett continued, her tone casual, but her eyes sharp and calculating. "Helix Dynamics is always looking for innovative thinkers, especially those with practical experience in salvage and retrofitting. We might have a position that would suit someone of your talents." "I'm not looking for corporate work," Blake replied carefully. "I'm doing fine here." Bennett raised an eyebrow, glancing pointedly at his worn coveralls and the grimy salvage yard around them. "Are you? A man who once designed engines for interstellar cruisers, now sorting through garbage? That seems like a waste of potential. What do you really want, Ms. Bennett?" Blake asked bluntly. "Helix Dynamics doesn't send chief officers to recruit salvage workers." Bennett's smile tightened slightly. "Direct. I appreciate that." She gestured around the yard. "We're conducting a technological survey of various salvage operations throughout the quadrant. There have been rumors of unusual artifacts turning up, specifically, items of potentially Luminarch origin." At the mention of the Luminarch, Blake felt a warning pulse from the neural interface behind his ear. Arya was signaling him to be cautious. "Luminarch?" Blake forced a laugh. "Those are just old stories. If anything like that turned up here, Zarek would have sold it for a fortune long ago." "Perhaps," Bennett conceded. "But sometimes valuable items are overlooked, especially by those who don't know what they're looking at." She reached into her pocket and produced a small holographic projector. With a flick of her wrist, she activated it, displaying a rotating image of a device that bore a striking resemblance to components Blake had seen inside the Starweaver. "Have you encountered anything like this in your work here?" she asked, watching his face carefully. "Can't say that I have," Blake replied, genuinely curious about what the device was. "What is it?" "A fragment of what we believe to be a Luminarch navigation system," Bennett explained. "One was discovered in an abandoned mining colony near the Horsehead Nebula last year. We're very interested in acquiring more specimens." "Well, good luck with that," Blake said with a shrug. "Most of what comes through here is standard commercial tech, nothing exotic." Bennett studied him for a moment longer, then deactivated the holographic projector. "If you do happen to come across anything unusual, Mr. Turner, Helix Dynamics would compensate you very generously for bringing it to our attention." She handed him a sleek business card. "My private channel. Available day or night." Blake accepted the card, slipping it into his pocket. I'll keep that in mind. You do that, Bennett replied. She glanced once more around the salvage yard before turning to leave. Oh, and Mr. Turner? I understand you recently made a purchase here, an old transport vessel of some kind. Blake's heart skipped a beat. News travels fast. We make it our business to stay informed, Bennett said smoothly. If you find yourself unable to restore it, Helix Dynamics would be happy to take it off your hands. We're always in need of test vessels for our weapons systems. With that parting comment, Bennett and her security detail returned to their shuttle, leaving Blake with an uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. They know something, Blake subvocalized once the shuttle had departed. How could they know about the ship already? Unknown, Arya responded in his mind. But their interest suggests a concerning possibility. They may have encountered Luminarch technology before. Throughout the day, Blake continued his normal work routine in the salvage yard while processing what had happened. The visit from Helix Dynamics had shaken him more than he cared to admit. If a powerful corporation was actively searching for Luminarch technology, his discovery of the Starweaver put him in a dangerous position. As evening approached, Blake returned to the ship, ensuring no one was watching before slipping inside. Arya, we need to leave, he announced as soon as the entrance sealed behind him. Tonight, if possible. It's not safe to stay here. Agreed, the AI responded. However, there is a matter that requires your attention first. The holographic display in the cockpit activated, showing a sealed compartment that Blake hadn't noticed during his initial exploration. This contains something the last Luminarch pilot wanted preserved, Arya explained. It is now yours to access as inheritor. Blake approached the compartment, which opened at his touch. Inside was a small crystalline object about the size of his palm, glowing with an inner blue-white light. As he lifted it, the crystal pulsed gently, and Blake felt a strange resonance within himself, as though it were somehow attuned to his very cells. What is this? He asked, turning the crystal carefully in his hands. A memory crystal, Arya replied. It contains a message from the last Luminarch to use this vessel, recorded before their species' departure from this galaxy. Can I view it? Yes. Place it in the reception cradle. A small pedestal rose from the floor of the cockpit. Blake set the crystal in its center, and immediately the interior of the ship was filled with a projection, not just visual and audio, but somehow conveying emotions and sensations as well. A figure appeared, humanoid but clearly not human, tall and slender, with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with every movement, four-fingered hands, and large, luminous eyes that conveyed profound intelligence and what Blake could only interpret as deep sadness. When the figure spoke, Blake understood the words despite them being in no language he recognized. The translation seemed to bypass his ears entirely, flowing directly into his mind. Greetings, inheritor. If you are experiencing this message, then the Starweaver has found you worthy. I am Eliur, last navigator of the Luminarch exploration fleet, and what I must share with you carries both great promise and great warning. The figure, Eliur, seemed to look directly at Blake, its gaze penetrating across the vast gulf of time. By now, the Luminarch have long departed this galaxy. Our civilization reached its zenith, exploring the furthest reaches of space, understanding the deepest mysteries of reality. And in our exploration, we discovered something terrible, a cosmic cycle of extinction that has repeated throughout the universe for billions of years. Images flashed around Eliur, stars dying, civilizations falling, entire galaxies going dark. We called them the Void, not a species, but a force, a programmed extinction event that occurs when intelligent life reaches a certain threshold of advancement. The Void's purpose, as best we could determine, was established by the first sentient beings to arise in this universe, a failsafe to prevent any one species from consuming all resources or establishing permanent dominion. Blake watched, transfixed, as the projection showed massive structures, larger than planets, emerging from the depths of intergalactic space, deploying smaller entities that systematically destroyed advanced worlds. The Luminarch chose to depart rather than face extinction, using our technology to escape to another reality entirely. But some of us believe this was wrong, that we had a responsibility to break this cycle, to find a way for advanced civilizations to survive and flourish without triggering the void's awakening. Eliur's expression intensified, the emotion behind the projection growing stronger. I left the Starweaver behind as part of this effort. It contains our most advanced technology, but designed to appear unremarkable until the right inheritor is found. The ship bonds genetically to prevent misuse and contains safeguards to prevent its technology from spreading too rapidly, potentially triggering the void prematurely. The projection shifted, showing a complex diagram of the galaxy with certain points illuminated. There are others like you, inheritor, individuals with the rare genetic markers that allow interaction with our technology. The Starweaver can help you find them. Together, you must prepare your civilizations for what is coming, not by racing toward technological advancement, but by developing in a different direction than those who came before, a path the void will not recognize as threatening. Eliur's form began to fade slightly, the projection reaching its conclusion. You must be cautious. The technology aboard the Starweaver, if fully unleashed, could catapult your civilization forward by millennia, but doing so too quickly would be catastrophic. Instead, use it to guide, to protect, to prepare. Find the others. Build the network. And when the time comes, be ready to face what we could not. With a final pulse of light, the projection ended, leaving Blake standing in stunned silence. Arya, he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Is this real? Is some cosmic extinction force actually coming to wipe out advanced civilizations? The Luminarch believed so, Arya replied. Their research spanning thousands of years documented the pattern across multiple galaxies. By their calculations, this galaxy will face the void within the next few centuries, as several civilizations approach the theoretical advancement threshold. Blake sank into the pilot's chair, mind reeling. What had started as finding an unusual ship in a junkyard had suddenly become something far more significant and terrifying. He was now in possession of technology that could change the course of galactic history, with the knowledge that using it incorrectly could hasten an extinction event. We really need to leave now, Blake said after several minutes of contemplation. Can you get us out of here without being noticed? Affirmative, Arya confirmed. The salvage yard security systems are primitive compared to my capabilities. I can mask our departure completely. Then let's go, Blake decided. We need to understand more about what's happening, especially why Helix Dynamics is looking for Luminarch technology. And apparently, we need to find others with this genetic marker Eliur mentioned. Where would you like to go first? Arya asked as the ship's systems came fully online, the cockpit lighting up with displays showing navigational options spanning the entire galaxy. Blake considered for a moment. Is there somewhere safe we can go to regroup? Somewhere off the grid, but where I can still access information networks. There is an abandoned research station in the Arcturian Nebula, Arya suggested, displaying its location. It is powered by self-sustaining fusion generators, but was evacuated during a border dispute 27 years ago and never reoccupied. Its location in a radiation belt makes it undesirable for most species, but would pose no threat to you while aboard the Starweaver. Perfect, Blake nodded. Set course for the Arcturian Nebula, and let's get out of here before anyone else comes looking for ancient technology. The Starweaver lifted silently from its resting place, its exterior still appearing as a battered old transport to any observers. But as it cleared the salvage yard's atmosphere containment field, the ship's true capabilities began to reveal themselves. It accelerated with impossible speed and grace, leaving the three sons of Salvage Yard 459 behind in moments. Blake watched in awe as stars blurred around them. There was no sensation of acceleration, no crushing G-forces, just smooth, effortless motion that defied everything he knew about space travel. Quantum fold drive engaging in 30 seconds, Arya announced. Destination, Arcturian Nebula. Estimated travel time, 17 minutes. Blake laughed in disbelief. 17 minutes? That's a 3-week journey with the fastest current drives. The Starweaver was designed for exploration of multiple galaxies. Arya reminded him. Efficiency was paramount. As the quantum fold drive engaged, reality seemed to bend around the ship. The sensation was indescribable, not uncomfortable, but profoundly strange, as though Blake were simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Through it all, the ship maintained perfect stability, its systems humming with power that by all rights should have required a generator the size of a small moon. 17 minutes later, they emerged in the heart of the Arcturian Nebula, a vast cloud of multicolored gases and stellar debris surrounding them in a breathtaking display. Ahead, a small space station drifted silently, its lights still functional, but its docking bays empty. Arrival at designated coordinates, Arya announced. The station's automated systems remain operational. No life forms detected aboard. Take us in, Blake instructed, still trying to process the implications of what he'd learned and what he now possessed. As the Starweaver approached the abandoned research station, Blake Turner knew his life had changed forever. What had begun as purchasing an old spaceship for 50 cents had transformed into a mission with galaxy-wide implications. Somewhere out there were others like him, genetic matches for Luminarch technology. Together, they would need to prepare for a threat that had already wiped out countless advanced civilizations. And in the meantime, powers like Helix Dynamics were already on his trail, hunting for technology they didn't understand and couldn't be allowed to possess. The race was on, and Blake, a human mechanic who had lost everything once before, now found himself holding the future of all sentient life in his hands. The docking process with the abandoned research station was flawless, the Starweaver's adaptive systems interfacing seamlessly with the station's outdated technology. As the airlocks cycled and pressure equalized, Blake felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. They were safe for now, but how long could they stay hidden? Station systems analysis complete, Arya informed him as they entered the main concourse. Power at 78% capacity, life support functioning normally, communication arrays intact but dormant. The radiation belt surrounding the nebula provides excellent natural camouflage against standard detection methods. The station was eerily quiet, designed for a scientific team of perhaps 20, but now entirely deserted. Personal items still sat on desks and in quarters, abandoned in what must have been a hasty evacuation. Blake explored carefully, finding the command center with its array of consoles and data terminals. "Can you interface with these systems?" he asked Arya through their neural connection. "We need information, current galactic news, data on Helix Dynamics, and anything about unusual technological discoveries in recent years." "Affirmative," Arya replied. "Establishing connection now." As Arya worked to extract information from the station's databases and connect to remote information networks, Blake continued exploring. He found the station's mess hall and helped himself to some emergency rations, surprised to find them still edible after all these years. Synthetic proteins never went bad, though their taste left much to be desired. "I have compiled relevant information," Arya announced as Blake finished his meager meal. "Would you prefer a summary or full data transfer?" "Summary first," Blake replied, returning to the command center. "Then we can dive into the details." Holographic displays activated around him, showing news articles, corporate records, and classified documents that Arya had somehow managed to access. Helix Dynamics has undergone significant changes in the past 5 years, Arya began. Originally a conventional weapons manufacturer, they shifted focus dramatically after acquiring a small research firm called Lumina Technologies. Blake raised an eyebrow at the name. Lumina? As in, suspiciously similar to Luminarch? Indeed. Lumina Technologies was founded by Dr. Nathan Brooks, a xenoarchaeologist who discovered what appears to have been a Luminarch artifact in the Horsehead Nebula 6 years ago. Shortly after this discovery, Helix Dynamics acquired his company for an unprecedented sum. Images appeared showing a distinguished-looking man in his 50s with intense eyes and a neatly trimmed beard. Alongside were pictures of an excavation site on a barren moon and what appeared to be fragments of technology similar to what Blake had seen aboard the Starweaver. Since this acquisition, Helix Dynamics has established a highly classified research division dedicated to legacy technologies, a euphemism for reverse engineering ancient alien technology. They have been conducting discrete surveys of salvage yards, abandoned colonies, and known archaeological sites throughout the quadrant. Blake frowned, processing this information. So they found a piece of Luminarch tech and are hunting for more. But do they understand what they're dealing with? Do they know about the void? Unknown, Arya replied. However, I have found something concerning. A new image appeared, a classified military report. 3 months ago, a Helix Dynamics research facility in the Deneb system experienced a catastrophic power surge during an experiment. The official report cites equipment malfunction, but internal communications suggest they successfully activated a piece of recovered technology with unexpected results. Blake leaned forward, studying the report. What kind of results? The surge created a localized spatial anomaly that destroyed the facility and caused a gravitational disturbance detectable 3 systems away. Helix Dynamics attributed it to a containment failure, but private communications between executives express both alarm and excitement at the power demonstrated. Blake ran a hand through his hair, concern growing. They're playing with fire. If the Luminarch were right about the void, experiments like that could draw attention we don't want. Agreed. There is more. Arya displayed a series of personnel files. Following the incident, Helix Dynamics initiated a genetic screening program for all high-level researchers. The criteria matched the genetic markers the Luminarch identified as compatible with their technology. They're looking for people like me, Blake realized. But how would they know about the genetic connection? The most probable explanation is that they discovered it independently through trial and error. Their experiments would have shown different results when conducted by different personnel, leading to the identification of specific genetic factors. Blake paced the command center, thinking quickly. So Helix Dynamics is hunting for Luminarch tech and people who can use it without understanding the bigger picture about the void. That makes them dangerous to themselves and everyone else. There is one more item of significance, Arya added, bringing up a final display. Recent intelligence reports indicate unusual activity in deep space beyond the Sagittarius Arm. Multiple monitoring stations have detected energy signatures unlike anything in current databases. A chill ran down Blake's spine. The void. Inconclusive, Arya replied. However, the timing correlates with Helix Dynamics' experimental accident. It may be coincidence, or it may be the first signs of attention from forces best left undisturbed. Blake sat heavily in the command chair, the weight of his situation fully hitting him. He was a salvage worker, a disgraced engineer with no resources or connections. Yet somehow, he had become entangled in events that could determine the fate of galactic civilization. Arya, according to Elier's message, there are others like me out there, other inheritors. Can we find them? Yes. The Starweaver contains a passive detection system designed to identify compatible genetic signatures. However, range is limited to approximately 1 light-year unless we utilize a specialized beacon. Activating such a beacon would also increase our visibility to others, including Helix Dynamics, Blake muttered. We need allies, but we need to be careful about how we find them. He thought for a moment, then straightened with sudden determination. I need to know more about what happened to me at the Interspecies Fleet Engineering Corps. My dismissal might be connected to all this. Arya was silent for a moment, searching through the data she had gathered. I have accessed your personnel file from the IFEC database. Your dismissal occurred after you proposed an unconventional engine design that violated what were deemed to be fundamental laws of physics. Your superiors concluded you were either incompetent or deliberately falsifying research. Blake laughed bitterly. They said I was delusional, that my design would never work because it contradicted established theory. But I knew it would work. I could see it so clearly in my mind. Your design shares significant similarities with Luminarch propulsion principles, Arya observed, displaying a comparison between Blake's theoretical engine and a simplified schematic of the Starweaver's drive system. It appears your genetic compatibility with Luminarch technology may have granted you intuitive insights into principles you could not have consciously known. This revelation hit Blake like a physical blow. His career had been destroyed because he had somehow tapped into knowledge from a civilization that had disappeared thousands of years ago, knowledge he couldn't possibly explain or defend with current scientific understanding. Did anyone else at the fleet show similar intuitions? Blake asked, wondering if there might be other inheritors in his former workplace. Processing personnel records, Arya responded. After a brief pause, she continued, there is one individual of note. Emily Parker, propulsion engineer, transferred to a classified research division 6 months after your dismissal. Her work contains theoretical models with Luminarch-like elements, though less developed than your own. Emily, Blake murmured, remembering a brilliant, intense woman with whom he'd worked briefly. We collaborated on a few projects. She always seemed to understand what I was trying to do, even when no one else did. Her current location is listed as the Helix Dynamics Advanced Research Facility on Europa. Blake stood abruptly. She's working for Helix now? That can't be a coincidence. Unlikely to be coincidental, Arya agreed. High probability that Helix Dynamics identified her as having similar genetic markers to yourself. A plan began forming in Blake's mind. We need to contact her, find out what she knows. If she's another inheritor, she needs to understand what she's involved with, what's really at stake. Approaching a Helix Dynamics facility carries significant risk, Arya cautioned. I know, Blake acknowledged. But we need allies, and Emily might be our best lead. He paused, thinking through the implications. Besides, Helix clearly doesn't have a full understanding of Luminarch technology, or they wouldn't still be hunting through salvage yards. They have fragments, not something like the Starweaver. That is a logical assessment, Arya conceded. How do you propose to approach Engineer Parker? Blake smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. We're going to use Helix's own tactics against them. They're looking for Luminarch tech and people who can use it. Let's give them exactly what they want, or at least what they think they want. Over the next few days, Blake and Arya developed their strategy. Using the station's communication array, subtly enhanced by the Starweaver's technology, they crafted a digital trail that would catch Helix Dynamics' attention without revealing their true location or capabilities. Blake created technical specifications for a fictional piece of Luminarch technology, just advanced enough to seem revolutionary by current standards, but nothing close to what the Starweaver actually contained. He then accidentally allowed these specifications to appear in an encrypted transmission to a known Helix Dynamics information broker. The bait is set, Blake announced as they completed the transmission. Now we wait to see if they bite. They didn't have to wait long. Within hours, Helix Dynamics Intelligence Division had flagged the transmission and begun tracing its origin. Arya, monitoring their systems through backdoor access she'd established, kept Blake informed of their progress. They have dispatched an acquisition team, Arya reported 2 days after the transmission, led by Lauren Bennett herself. Their trajectory suggests they are heading to the Arcturus system, close to our actual location, but not precise. Perfect, Blake replied. That gives us time to prepare for Phase 2. Can you fabricate a convincing decoy using the Starweaver's materials? Affirmative. The ship's adaptive materials can create a self-contained artifact matching the specifications in your transmission. It will appear functional, but contain no actual Luminarch technology. And when they try to activate it, it will produce impressive but ultimately harmless effects before appearing to burn out. Analysis will suggest they need a genetically compatible operator, which will lead them to intensify their search for individuals matching your profile. Blake nodded in satisfaction. Meanwhile, we'll be tracking their reaction and looking for an opportunity to contact Emily directly. He paused, a shadow crossing his face. I just hope she's not fully committed to whatever Helix is doing. If the Luminarch were right about the void, These experiments could be catastrophically dangerous. Based on her psychological profile, Engineer Parker values scientific truth above institutional loyalty, Arya offered. If presented with compelling evidence, probability is high that she will reassess her current affiliations. Blake hoped Arya was right, because if their plan failed, they would have revealed themselves to one of the most powerful corporations in the galaxy without gaining any allies. And somewhere in the darkness of deep space, ancient forces might already be stirring, drawn by humanity's reckless experiments with technology they did not understand. The following day, as Blake monitored communications from the research station, an unexpected alert came through. A high-priority message from Zarek, the Corvin supervisor from Salvage Yard 459, sent through multiple relays as though trying to avoid detection. Blake Turner. The message began, the translation of the Corvin's clicking language appearing as text. Your departure has caused unexpected complications. Representatives from Helix Dynamics returned, asking specific questions about you and your acquired vessel. When informed you had left, they became aggressive. They are now conducting a full search of the yard and have placed tracking measures on all outgoing shipments. I believe my safety may be compromised. If you receive this, be warned. They know more than they should about your acquisition. They showed particular interest in residual energy signatures where your vessel was stored. Zarek out. Blake frowned, showing the message to Arya. This changes things. They're not just following our bait. They already suspected something about the Starweaver. This suggests a concerning possibility, Arya replied. Helix Dynamics may have more advanced detection technology than anticipated, possibly derived from their Luminarch fragments. Blake paced the control room, rethinking their strategy. We need to move faster. If they can track energy signatures, they might eventually find this station despite the radiation belt. Agreed. I have been monitoring their acquisition team's movements. They have changed course and are now heading directly to Salvage Yard 459 rather than the Arcturus system. They're ignoring our bait, Blake realized, which means they have a stronger lead to follow. He made a quick decision. We need to go to Europa immediately. If Emily is another inheritor, we can't risk Helix figuring out what she is before we can reach her. The Europa facility is heavily secured, Arya cautioned. Direct approach would be high risk. Then we don't approach directly, Blake replied, already heading back to the Starweaver. You said the ship can change its external appearance, right? Make it look like a standard corporate shuttle. Correct. The adaptive hull can mimic any vessel of similar size. Then we're going to become a Helix Dynamics supply ship, Blake declared. Get us to Europa as quickly as possible without drawing attention. We need to find Emily before Helix realizes what they really have in their possession, both with her and potentially with fragments of Luminarch tech. The Starweaver disengaged from the research station, its exterior seamlessly transforming into the appearance of a standard Helix Dynamics supply shuttle. Within moments, they were accelerating away from the Arcturian Nebula, the quantum fold drive engaging for a rapid journey to Jupiter's icy moon. As stars streaked past in the folded space around them, Blake couldn't help but reflect on how quickly his life had changed. Just days ago, he had been a disgraced mechanic working in a salvage yard. Now he was piloting a ship of legend, racing to prevent a powerful corporation from potentially triggering a cosmic extinction event. Arya, he asked quietly, what are the chances we're already too late? That Helix's experiments have already drawn the attention of the Void. Insufficient data for precise calculation, Arya admitted. However, if the Luminarch projections were accurate, the threshold for triggering a full Void response requires sustained advancement beyond certain technological parameters. Isolated experiments, even catastrophic ones, may not be sufficient. Blake nodded, taking some comfort in that assessment. Then we still have time. We just need to make sure Helix doesn't cross that threshold before they understand what they're dealing with. Approaching Europa, Arya announced several hours later. Helix Dynamics Advanced Research Facility located on the anti-Jovian hemisphere. Security systems active and at heightened alert status. Can we determine if Emily Parker is currently at the facility? Arya accessed the facility's personnel tracking system, bypassing several layers of security with ease. Confirmed. Engineer Parker is in Research Lab 7, Level B. She has been there for approximately 14 hours without interruption, suggesting an intensive research session. Is there any way to communicate with her privately? Some system we can use to reach her without alerting security? Scanning. After a moment, Arya continued. Engineer Parker's personal communication device appears to be isolated from the main security network, an unusual configuration suggesting she values privacy. I can establish a direct connection to this device without triggering facility alerts. Perfect, Blake said, feeling a surge of hope. Send her a message. Keep it simple. Emily, it's Blake Turner. What you're working on is more dangerous than you know. We need to talk. Alone. As the Starweaver entered Europa's thin atmosphere, disguised as a routine supply shuttle, Blake watched the massive Helix Dynamics facility come into view. Built into the icy surface of the moon, it was a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and subsurface structures, with landing pads scattered across its surface. Security drones patrolled the perimeter, and defense turrets tracked their approach. Message delivered, Arya reported. Engineer Parker has received it. Her heart rate and neural activity suggest surprise and concern. She is moving from her workstation to a private area. Can she respond? Yes. Waiting. Blake held his breath, everything hinging on how Emily would react. After what seemed like an eternity, a response appeared on the Starweaver's communication display. Blake, how did you find me? How are you bypassing security protocols? This channel should be impossible to access. If this is really you, prove it. Tell me what you said when we looked at the failed Jensen reactor test. Blake smiled, remembering the moment clearly. I said, the problem isn't the math, it's the physics. They're trying to force the universe to follow their equations instead of the other way around. There was another pause, then a new message. It's really you. What do you mean dangerous? My research is theoretical, not applied. And how are you contacting me? Where are you? I'm on approach to the facility right now, Blake replied. Disguised as a supply shuttle. Can you meet me? It's not safe to explain everything this way. You're insane, came the response. This facility has weapon systems that would vaporize unauthorized vessels. Whatever you're flying won't fool them for long. Trust me, it will, Blake assured her. Can you get to landing pad C without raising suspicion? Claim you need to check a shipment? After a long pause, I can try. But this better be worth potentially losing my job, Blake. I've worked hard to rebuild after what happened to you at the fleet. It's worth more than you can imagine, Blake replied. See you in 20 minutes. And Emily, don't tell anyone. Not even colleagues you trust. As the Starweaver approached landing pad C, Blake felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. If Emily refused to listen, or worse, alerted security, they would be trapped. But something told him she would hear him out. The same intuition that had led him to design engines that shouldn't have been possible by current scientific understanding. Security scanning protocols active, Arya warned as they descended toward the landing pad. They are comparing our vessel profile to expected supply shipments. Can they see through our disguise? Negative. The Starweaver's camouflage exceeds their detection capabilities. However, they are noting a discrepancy in scheduled arrivals. A tense voice came over the communication system. Unidentified shuttle approaching Pad C. You are not on today's manifest. Identify yourself and state your business immediately. Blake took a deep breath and activated the communication link. Helix Supply Transport HSD 927, carrying priority components for Project Lumina. Clearance code Tango Eka 972. The code was something Arya had extracted from the facility's logistics system, valid but rarely used, meant for special deliveries that bypassed normal protocols. There was a long silence as security processed the information. Finally, the voice returned, less hostile but still suspicious. Clearance code acknowledged. We have no record of a priority shipment today. Maintain position for verification. They are dispatching a security team to visually inspect the vessel upon landing, Arya informed Blake. Estimate 4 minutes until they discover the deception. We need a distraction, Blake muttered. Something to buy us time until Emily arrives. I can create a minor systems disruption in another section of the facility, Arya offered. Nothing damaging, but sufficient to divert security resources temporarily. Do it, Blake ordered as they settled onto the landing pad. Make it something technical, not obviously an attack. A power fluctuation or communication glitch. Implementing now. As the Starweaver touched down, Blake could see a security team already approaching across the pad, weapons at ready. But before they reached the ship, alarms began blaring from the main facility complex. The security team hesitated, receiving new instructions through their communication devices. After a moment of confusion, half the team peeled away, heading back toward the main building. Security resources diverted by 52%, Arya reported. Remaining personnel still present a significant threat. Blake watched anxiously through the Starweaver's sensors, looking for any sign of Emily. Just as the remaining security officers reached the ship's exterior, a figure emerged from a side entrance to the facility, a woman in a lab coat, moving purposefully toward the landing pad. Emily, Blake breathed in relief. The security team intercepted her before she reached the ship. Blake enhanced the audio feed to hear their conversation. Dr. Parker, this area is currently restricted, the lead officer said firmly. We have an unscheduled arrival that requires verification. Emily straightened, projecting an air of authority that Blake remembered well from their days at the fleet. That's why I'm here, officer. This delivery contains specialized components for my research division. I was notified of its arrival just minutes ago, high priority clearance from Director Bennett herself. The security officer frowned. We've received no such notification. Emily gave him a look of practiced exasperation. And yet, here I am, and there's the delivery. Would you like to explain to Director Bennett why her priority shipment was delayed because you couldn't coordinate internal communications? The officer hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with challenging a senior researcher. I still need to verify the contents and the transport crew. Of course, Emily agreed smoothly. I'll handle the verification personally. Standard procedure for sensitive materials, as you know. You and your team can return to your regular duties. I've already entered my authorization code to accept responsibility for this delivery. After another moment of hesitation, the security officer nodded curtly. Very well, Dr. Parker. But I'll need to log this discrepancy in my report. By all means, Emily replied with a dismissive wave. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have time-sensitive work to complete. As the security team reluctantly withdrew, maintaining a watchful distance, Emily approached the Starweaver. Blake activated the entry sequence, creating a doorway in what appeared to be a standard cargo hatch. That was impressive, Blake said as Emily stepped inside, her eyes widening at the interior that was clearly not a standard supply shuttle. Blake Turner, she said, her voice a mixture of wonder and confusion as the entrance sealed seamlessly behind her. What in the hell have you gotten yourself into? And what is this ship? That's a long story, Blake replied, gesturing toward the cockpit. And we don't have much time before security realizes something's wrong. We need to leave now. Emily balked, looking around at the advanced technology surrounding them. Leave? I can't just leave. I have research responsibilities. Research that could accidentally trigger an extinction-level event, Blake interrupted gravely. Emily, what do you know about the Luminarch? Her eyes narrowed, sudden wariness replacing confusion. How do you know about that? That information is classified at the highest levels of Helix. Because this, Blake gestured around them, is a Luminarch ship. Fully functional, fully integrated. And it responded to me because I have a genetic marker that the Luminarch engineered into certain human lineages thousands of years ago. Just like you do. Emily stared at him for a long moment, processing his words. Then her scientific curiosity seemed to override her caution. That's impossible. We've only recovered fragments, and even those are beyond our understanding. A complete vessel would be. I bought it for 50 cents in a salvage yard, Blake said with a wry smile. But that's really not the important part right now. What's important is that the technology you're helping Helix develop could draw the attention of something the Luminarch called the Void, a cosmic force that eliminates civilizations when they reach a certain level of advancement. Emily's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. The Void, we found references to that in some of the fragments. Theoretical models suggested some kind of fail-safe mechanism in the universe, but most of the research team dismissed it as metaphorical or religious. It's not metaphorical, Blake insisted. And Helix's experiments are getting dangerously close to crossing the threshold that triggers it. A sudden alarm blared through the ship's communication system. Security protocols escalating, Arya announced. They have detected anomalies in Dr. Parker's authorization and are dispatching a reinforced team. Weapon systems are being activated. We need to go, Blake urged, taking Emily's arm. Now? I can explain everything once we're safe. Emily hesitated, torn between her established life and the extraordinary claims Blake was making. How do I know you're telling the truth? That this isn't some elaborate deception? Arya, Blake called, show her. The interior of the ship darkened, and a holographic projection appeared, the same message from Eliur that Blake had viewed days earlier. Emily watched, transfixed, as the last Luminarch navigator explained the Void, the genetic inheritors, and the purpose of the Starweaver. As the message concluded, Emily's scientific skepticism warred visibly with what she had just witnessed. This technology, it's beyond anything we've achieved. Beyond anything we thought possible. Exactly, Blake said urgently. And that's why it's so dangerous in the wrong hands. Helix doesn't understand what they're dealing with. A sudden impact rocked the ship. Defense turrets activated, Arya reported calmly. Minimal damage to exterior camouflage layer. Recommend immediate departure. Emily made her decision, moving quickly to the co-pilot's seat. Get us out of here. I need to see more, understand more, before I can fully accept this. But I know enough about what Helix has been doing to be concerned. Blake took the pilot's position, relief flooding through him. Arya, disengage all external connections and prepare for emergency departure. Maximum stealth protocols. The Starweaver hummed to life, its systems responding instantly to Blake's commands. Outside, security forces were converging on the landing pad, and defense turrets were swiveling to target the vessel more accurately. Hold on, Blake warned as the ship lifted off, just as another barrage of energy weapons struck its hull. This might get interesting. Emily gripped her seat as the Starweaver shot upward with impossible acceleration, its camouflage shifting to mimic the icy background of Europa's surface. The ship effortlessly evaded the tracking systems of the facility's defenses, disappearing into Europa's thin atmosphere and then into the vast space beyond Jupiter's massive gravity well. Pursuit craft launching, Arya informed them. Estimated interception in 12 minutes at their maximum velocity. We won't be here in 12 minutes, Blake assured Emily, who was watching him with a mixture of awe and lingering suspicion. Arya, set course for the Kuiper Belt. We need somewhere isolated to regroup and plan our next move. Course set, the AI confirmed. Quantum fold drive engaging in 30 seconds. Emily shook her head in amazement. Quantum fold? That's purely theoretical. The energy requirements alone would be. Her words died away as space seemed to bend around them, the stars stretching into streaks of light before settling into an entirely new pattern. They had traversed what would normally be a journey of hours and seconds. Welcome to the future that the Luminarch wanted us to have, Blake said quietly. Or rather, the future they hoped we'd be ready for when the time came. As the Starweaver cruised through the remote edges of the solar system, Blake explained everything, finding the ship, discovering Arya, learning about the Void, and his plan to find other inheritors who could help guide humanity away from the path that had led to extinction for so many other civilizations. Emily listened intently, her initial skepticism gradually giving way to acceptance as the evidence mounted. The technology surrounding them was simply too advanced, too perfect, to be a hoax or delusion. So these genetic markers, she said when Blake had finished, They allow us to interface with Luminarch technology. That explains so much about my research. Intuitive leaps that seemed to come from nowhere, theoretical models that just felt right despite contradicting established physics. Exactly what happened to me at the fleet, Blake nodded. Our brains are somehow compatible with their way of understanding reality. It's not that we're smarter than other humans. We're just tuned to a different frequency. Emily's expression turned grave. Blake, Helix has been experimenting with direct neural interfaces to Luminarch fragments. They've had some success, but the results have been unpredictable. Dangerous. 3 researchers died in an experiment last month when their neural patterns were somehow overwritten by stored information in a Luminarch data crystal. Blake felt sick at the implications. They're forcing the connection without the genetic compatibility. Yes, and Director Bennett is obsessed with making it work. She believes Luminarch technology is the key to Helix dominating the next century of development. She's willing to accept casualties as the cost of progress. And she has no idea about the void, Blake added grimly. About the cosmic consequences of advancing too quickly in the wrong direction. Emily shook her head. No. Or if she does, she doesn't believe it. The fragments we've recovered contain references to it, but most of the research team considers it metaphorical. A cultural myth the Luminarch created to explain their own eventual departure from this galaxy. We need to find more people like us, Blake decided. Other inheritors who can help us understand the Luminarch's plan and create a network of influence to guide development away from whatever triggers the void. I might be able to help with that, Emily offered, her scientific mind already working on the problem. Helix has a database of individuals with genetic markers of interest, people whose DNA contains sequences they've identified as potentially compatible with Luminarch technology. I downloaded a copy before leaving. With Aria's help, we could analyze it, find others who might be inheritors. Blake felt a surge of hope. That's perfect. And with the Starweaver, we can reach them before Helix does. As they discussed their plans, the ship's sensors suddenly alerted them to an approaching vessel, massive and unlike any known design. Its energy signature off the charts. Unknown craft detected, Aria announced. Configuration matches known species in database. Energy patterns suggest extremely advanced technology. Blake and Emily exchanged alarmed glances. The void, Emily whispered. Negative, Aria replied after further analysis. Energy signature contains elements similar to Luminarch technology, but with significant variations. Attempting communication. Before Blake could object, a transmission came through, visual and audio, displaying a bridge or command center of extraordinary design. The beings operating it were humanoid, but clearly not human, with silver-toned skin and eyes that seemed to shift color as they moved. Attention vessel containing Luminarch signatures. A melodious voice addressed them in perfect English. This is Captain Alara of the Stellar Conservancy ship Horizon Seeker. We have detected your activation of Luminarch systems and request immediate communication. Blake stared at the screen in shock. The Stellar Conservancy? What is that? The captain smiled, an expression surprisingly similar to a human one. We are the descendants of those who chose a different path than the main Luminarch exodus. For thousands of years, we have monitored this galaxy, guiding development away from patterns that would trigger the void, preserving knowledge that would otherwise be lost. You're from the Luminarch? Emily asked incredulously. But they left this galaxy thousands of years ago. Most did, Captain Alara confirmed. But some chose to remain, to take responsibility for the younger species that would follow. We have evolved since then, adapted to life in the shadows of developing civilizations. We call ourselves the Keepers now. And you, inheritors, have finally awakened to your purpose. Blake felt as though the universe had suddenly expanded around him. You've been waiting for us? For humans with the genetic markers? Not just humans, Alara corrected gently. Many species carry the potential. But yes, we have waited for inheritors to discover their legacy and begin the work of protection. Your acquisition of the Starweaver was noted by our observers, as was your escape from the Helix Dynamics facility. Both showed promise. So what happens now? Emily asked, her scientific mind already racing with questions. What exactly is our purpose as inheritors? Captain Alera's expression grew serious. To learn, to understand, and ultimately, to guide your civilization toward a form of advancement the Void will not recognize as threatening. Development focused on sustainability, balance, and integration with the living universe rather than dominion over it. Blake thought of Helix Dynamics, of their reckless experiments and weapons development. And if we fail? If corporations like Helix continue on their current path? Then history repeats itself, Alera said simply. The Void awakens. Advanced civilization in this galaxy falls. The cycle continues as it has for billions of years. But we believe a different outcome is possible this time. The inheritors represent a new approach. Individuals within developing species who can understand the greater pattern and influence development from within. A new sense of purpose filled Blake as he absorbed these words. What had started with buying an old spaceship for 50 cents had led him to a role he could never have imagined, a guardian of humanity's future, guiding its development away from self-destruction. We accept your help, he told Captain Alera, glancing at Emily who nodded in firm agreement. And we'll find the others, the other inheritors. Together, we'll build this network of influence Elier spoke about. And we'll stop Helix Dynamics from triggering a response from the Void, Emily added determinedly. Captain Alera inclined her head in acknowledgement. Then let us begin. The work ahead is significant, but for the first time in thousands of years, we have hope for a different outcome. As the Starweaver maneuvered alongside the much larger Horizon Seeker, Blake reflected on how completely his life had changed in just a few days. From disgraced mechanic to humanity's advocate in a cosmic drama that had been playing out for eons. All because he'd spent 50 cents on an old spaceship that no one wanted. A ship that turned out to contain not just advanced technology, but a new purpose for his life and a new hope for human civilization. Sometimes, Blake mused, the most valuable discoveries come disguised as junk, waiting for the right person to recognize their true worth. In the weeks that followed, Blake and Emily worked closely with the Keepers, using the database she had taken from Helix Dynamics to identify and locate other inheritors throughout human space. With each new recruit, their network grew stronger, their understanding of Luminarch technology and philosophy more complete. Meanwhile, Helix Dynamics had intensified their search for Blake and Emily, unaware that they were now operating with the protection and guidance of beings descended from the very civilization whose technology they sought to exploit. Lauren Bennett had launched a galaxy-wide manhunt, offering substantial rewards for information leading to the recovery of what she called stolen company assets, meaning both Emily and whatever technology Blake possessed. But the Starweaver's capabilities, combined with the Keeper's resources, kept them safely ahead of their pursuers. And as their network of inheritors expanded, they began implementing subtle countermeasures against Helix's more dangerous experiments. Technical coincidences that caused setbacks, theoretical models that directed research away from paths that might trigger the Void, and occasionally, strategic recruitment of key scientists who showed signs of being potential inheritors themselves. 6 months after their escape from Europa, Blake and Emily stood on the observation deck of the Horizon Seeker, watching as a fleet of smaller vessels, each piloted by a newly discovered inheritor, practiced formation maneuvers near a remote gas giant, far from the usual shipping lanes. These ships weren't built for war, but for exploration and sustainability. Their technologies derived from Luminarch principles, but adapted to human operation. They're learning quickly, Captain Alera observed as she joined them at the viewport. Your species has remarkable adaptability. It's still hard to believe we've come so far in such a short time, Emily replied, watching as one of the ships executed a particularly difficult spatial fold maneuver. 6 months ago, I was helping Helix try to weaponize fragments of technology we barely understood. Now we're building a future the Luminarch hoped for. Now we're saving humanity from itself, Blake added with a smile, taking her hand. Their moment of reflection was interrupted by Aria's voice through their neural interfaces. Urgent alert. Helix Dynamics has activated a prototype based on corrupted Luminarch technology. Energy signatures suggest imminent catastrophic failure. Captain Alera's expression grew grave. The threshold. They may cross it. We need to stop them, Blake said urgently. Where? Mars Research Station, Aria replied. Director Bennett is personally overseeing the test. Within minutes, the Starweaver was racing toward Mars, pushing its quantum-fold drive to limits Blake hadn't known were possible. They arrived to find the research station enveloped in unstable energy fields, reality itself seeming to warp around the facility. It's begun. Alera's voice came through the communication system. The void will detect this disruption. Blake made a decision. Not if we contain it first. He piloted the Starweaver directly into the heart of the distortion, the ship's Luminarch systems automatically adapting to the chaotic energies. Inside the facility, they found Lauren Bennett frantically trying to shut down a pulsing device that was clearly out of control. Her eyes widened in shock as Blake and Emily approached, protected by the Starweaver's adaptive field. You, she gasped. What have you done? We're trying to save you, Emily replied, quickly assessing the device. This technology was never meant to be forced this way. Blake placed his hands on the device, feeling the Luminarch interface respond to his genetic signature. Together, he told Emily. She joined him, their combined connection gradually stabilizing the runaway reaction. As the energy field collapsed, Bennett stared in awe. How did you? The same way I bought a legendary spaceship for 50 cents, Blake said with a weary smile. By being exactly the right person at the right time. In the aftermath, Helix Dynamics was dismantled, its Luminarch artifacts placed under the protection of the newly formed Inheritor Council, humans and other species working together with the Keepers to guide technological development along safer paths. 1 year to the day after Blake had found the Starweaver, he stood with Emily on a hill overlooking a new settlement, the first of many designed according to Luminarch principles of harmony and sustainability. From salvage yard mechanic to saving civilization, Emily mused, leaning against his shoulder. All because you spent 50 cents on an old spaceship. Blake laughed. Best deal I ever made. Above them, the stars shone peacefully. The void's attention turned elsewhere as humanity found a different path forward, not conquest or exploitation, but balance and integration. The cycle of extinction that had claimed so many civilizations would not claim Earth's children. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.